The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Massive protests overtake Israel, a familiar face with a new show, taking seminary food to the highest of Morningside Heights, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. If 14 million Americans protested against the government policy, it would be perhaps the news story of a generation here in the United States. Well, the same proportion of Israel's population turned out Saturday to protest the financial policies of the Israeli government. Nearly 300,000 protesters are reported to have turned out in Tel Aviv alone, with tens of thousands protesting elsewhere in Israel, demanding an increase in government services. The protests are responding not so much to a single event as to decades of cuts in education, health, and welfare, in addition to diminishing salaries in the private sector and inflation of the prices of goods and services. While the protests have most often been characterized as a call for more affordable housing, they are clearly about that and so much more. The protests have gone on for 3 weeks and have grown in the number of participants and in the range and volume of demands. This week, the Knesset is breaking from its summer recess to hold an emergency session about the protests. To give another sense of just how big these protests are, compare them to the popular vote totals for the major parties in the 2009 election that saw Benjamin Netanyahu become prime minister. In 2009, several parties in his parliamentary government had similar vote totals to the number arriving for protests this past Saturday. In the 2009 election, after the two top vote-getters, Netanyahu's Likud and Tzipi Livni's Kadima parties, the next four top-voted political parties were Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman's Yisrael Beitenu with 394,577 votes, Defense Minister Ehud Barak's Labor Party with 334,900 votes, Interior Minister Eli Yishai's Shas Party with 286,300 votes, and United Torah Judaism with 147,954 votes. Again, compare those with the more than 300,000 who protested this past Saturday. This means that just based on those who showed up on Saturday, those currently protesting the government's economic policies are essentially the equivalent of an entire political party. Intriguingly, one of the major reasons these protests are happening now is that Israel has finally secured itself 3 decades after the First Intifada to the point where more citizen attention can be paid to financial matters. So, as the administration of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces internal pressure on these domestic welfare concerns, it is the larger issue of Israeli security as part of the peace process that will continue to bear on the debate. And on that front of Israeli-Palestinian relations, as we've learned in recent weeks, the Netanyahu administration is also having to scramble in light of increased international support for unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. Despite clear opposition to immediate Palestinian statehood from the United States, Germany, and some others, it is clear that overall international opinion continues to tilt further toward the Palestinians. But while Netanyahu is clearly facing some difficulties among his electorate, a Jewish politician here in the United States could be gearing up for an historic campaign. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who recently returned to the House of Representatives to vote on the debt plan, has been cleared by her neurosurgeon to run in the 2012 elections, should she choose to do so. Said the doctor, "There's no real reason she wouldn't be able to hold office. It's not about her capabilities. It's purely a decision that is personal and what her desires are. I'll support her in whichever way she goes." However, it's not yet clear which way Giffords will go. No announcement has been made about her intentions, and the deadline to file for re-election won't arrive until May of next year. But there's one congressional battle involving a Jewish candidate going on right now, and it's getting contentious over issues relating to Israel. The special election to fill the seat of the recently resigned Congressman Anthony Weiner in a heavily Jewish district in Queens, New York, has become a race in which the candidates are trying to out-hawk each other when it comes to U.S. support for Israel, and specifically the approach of the Democratic administration of President Barack Obama. It's to be expected that the Republican candidate would be critical of the Democratic president, but the Democratic candidate, David Weprin, is also distancing himself from Obama. Most recently, he told the New York Post that he will not endorse Obama's run for re-election, at least until after the special election for his congressional seat in September. Former Democratic Mayor of New York Ed Koch, meanwhile, has endorsed Republican Bob Turner in the election, saying he's doing so specifically to send a message to the Obama administration, though Koch has been known to endorse Republicans in the past. To shore up his Israel hawk credentials, Weprin has courted and received the endorsement of Connecticut Senator Joseph Lieberman. Meantime, in news of the U.S. contributing to Israel in matters not related to the United Nations, one of the most important signings in Israeli basketball history is bringing former Los Angeles Laker Jordan Farmar to the Israeli team at Maccabi Tel Aviv. Farmar, a former star for the UCLA Bruins, was a bench player last season for the New Jersey Nets, averaging 7.4 points and 2.7 assists. If you're wondering what Israeli basketball signing could have been more important than this one, you might have to go all the way back to the 1960s and a man named Brodie. Brodie, a standout player at the University of Illinois, was drafted 12th in the NBA by the then Baltimore Bullets. He turned down an NBA job to play in Israel after being urged to do so by leading Israelis, including the legendary general Moshe Dayan. Of course, Dayan is most famous for his eye patch, but he's not the only person who saw the world through a different perspective. Rebecca Honig-Friedman takes us on a journey with someone who also has her own take on things, comedian Judy Gold, who's out with a new show.
Here's the story of a girl named Judith.
Growing up, Jewish comedian Judy Gold wished her life were a sitcom.
Her brother Alan and sister Jane. Her parents were old and thought everyone hated the Jews.
That's the premise behind The Judy Show, her new one-woman show, now enjoying a limited run at the DR2 Theater in Manhattan. We caught up with Judy before the show to get the inside scoop on her hilarious new play.
It's a story of my life, and also about my dreams and aspirations. So, I talk about how I was really addicted to family sitcoms when I was growing up because, like most kids, I really couldn't stand my family.
You might recall seeing Gold on TJC's The Salon and Holy Days series, or on various other television shows and comedy clubs over the years. But The Judy Show is Gold like you've never seen or heard her before. Mostly funny and at times touching, the play tells the story of Gold's life through the lens of her sitcom addiction.
Judith, you need a job with health insurance. Jews have health insurance. It's in the Talmud!
And though this is her second off-Broadway show, having created and starred in 25 Questions for a Jewish Mother, this is the first time Gold is portraying a character based on herself.
I wanted to do a show about me, but I was always so paranoid that who's going to care? I'm this tall Jewish gay kid in New Jersey who gets teased all the time. Who's going to care? But I got to tell you, people completely 100% relate to the show. And it's very, very personal.
Starting with her childhood, Gold works her way through her awkward adolescence.
Yes, we're all standing on the same floor.
Beginning her career as a stand-up comic.
It was like God had spoken to me.
Coming out as a lesbian to her family. And the birth of her two sons. And yes, that really is Gold playing the piano.
I always played as a kid, and I actually studied music in college. That was my major. But I never played piano on stage. It was sort of my little place I went to be alone, or my little secret that I had.
For more on The Judy Show, and why Judy Gold thinks her life would make a great sitcom, please watch the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Rebecca. When it comes to Jewish performances, one man recently had to perform under pressure in areas known for heat, the heat of the kitchen, the heat of competition, and the heat of television lights, and all that for a man who serves seminary students. Christian Needham reports.
The Jewish Theological Seminary is known more for its rabbis than its cooks, but the school's head chef, Joe Landa, recently challenged that perception in a very public forum. Landa triumphed on a recent episode of the Food Network show Chopped by winning over judges with his culinary spin on a variety of exotic ingredients, including beef tongue and pork rinds. Landa invited TJC into his kitchen at JTS, where the non-Jewish chef said he's constantly kept on his toes with culinary requests that sometimes challenge his ability to keep things kosher.
We've done Hawaiian luau's, we've done Ethiopian cuisine. I've had one meat party where they wanted to have a fettuccine alfredo. And it's like, well, that's a challenge there. Okay, there's no cheese, no dairy, no milk, no eggs. What am I going to do? So there's ways around it. You can use non-dairy creamer. You use a nice chicken stock, and you build up the sauce that way, and you thicken it with a little roux. And there's ways around all these rules and keeping it kosher at the same time.
With experience like that, the mystery ingredients on Chopped weren't likely to scare Landa, but the clock was another matter. On the Food Network show, 4 respected chefs face off against each other in elimination rounds of competition until just one is left standing. Each round has a short time limit, and the key ingredients for each round are a surprise chosen by the show's producers. Landa took TJC through each round of the competition, beginning with a mystery basket featuring flour tortillas, English cucumbers, fresh fava beans, and a pickled beef tongue.
Well, I'll tell you, you get 20 minutes to do it. For the first 5 minutes, I had no idea what I was going to do. There's a beef tongue, a giant beef tongue sitting there on my cutting board, and I had flour tortillas. So right away, I was like, I started sauteing some onions and some bacon, actually, just to get some smells going. And then it dawned on me, okay, we got a tortilla, let's go Mexican, with this.
But as Landa finished preparation of his dish and plated it, one of his competitors almost gave him a free pass into the next round.
One of the chef competitors did the biggest mistake was to leave one of the main mystery basket ingredients off the plate. That's almost an automatic elimination. So he was worried that he was going to get cut. And in my mind, I thought he was the best competition against me. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, good. Maybe we'll get him out of here early because he's a tough guy to be up against.
To hear more from Chef Joe Landa about his appearance on Chopped, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.